When 12-year-old Oliver arrived at Blackthorn Orphanage, the place felt wrong from the start. The old brick building stood alone on a misty hill, surrounded by a dead forest. Its windows were cracked, its walls covered in ivy, and a coldness seemed to seep from every stone. "This is your new home," Miss Holloway said with a forced smile. She was the headmistress, tall, pale, and severe. "You'll learn the rules quickly, I'm sure." The other children were quiet and pale, their eyes hollow. No one played, no one laughed. At dinner, they ate silently, glancing toward the tall grandfather clock in the corner, as if waiting for something. That night, Oliver woke to a strange sound, soft scratching at his door. He held his breath as the handle turned slowly, but the door didn't open. After a long, tense moment, the scratching stopped. The next day, he made his first friend, a girl named Eliza. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "This place, it's dangerous." "What do you mean?" Oliver asked. But before she could answer, Miss Holloway appeared. "No talking during breakfast," she snapped. Later, Eliza pulled him aside. "The house is alive," she said. "It takes children. The ones who go missing. No one talks about them, but we hear them at night." That evening, Oliver heard it again, the scratching. But this time, it was followed by a whisper. "Oliver." The voice was soft and broken, like it came from far away. He opened the door, but the hallway was empty. Only the cold air remained, rushing against his skin like icy fingers. The next day, Eliza showed him the forbidden wing, a long, dark corridor that always stayed locked. "The missing kids went in there," she said. "None of them came out." That night, Oliver and Eliza decided to find out the truth. They snuck into the forbidden wing, their flashlights casting long shadows on the stone walls. The air grew colder the deeper they went, and the whispers grew louder. "Help us." They found a heavy wooden door at the end of the hall. It swung open with a groan, revealing a spiral staircase leading down into darkness. In the basement, they found rows of old, empty beds and rusted chains hanging from the walls. And in the corner, a figure moved. It was a boy, pale, thin, and covered in dirt. His eyes were wide with fear. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered. "She'll know." Suddenly, the room filled with cold, and the whispers turned into a furious hiss. "You shouldn't be here." The air rippled, and Miss Holloway stepped from the shadows. But her face was wrong. Her skin cracked like old porcelain, and her eyes glowed with a terrible light. "You should have obeyed the rules," she said. The shadows came alive, reaching for them. Oliver grabbed Eliza's hand, and they ran, the air freezing around them. The whispers chased them up the stairs and down the hall, until they burst into the main room. But the house wasn't finished. The walls shook, the lights flickered, and the whispers grew into screams. The other children huddled together, terrified. Oliver turned. "We have to end this." He remembered the grandfather clock, the one thing everyone seemed afraid of. With a surge of courage, he ran to it and smashed the glass face with a chair. The clock let out a terrible, shuddering noise, and the house began to fall apart. Miss Holloway's scream echoed as the shadows swallowed her whole. The house shook violently, and the children ran for the front door. When they burst into the cold night air, the house behind them collapsed into itself, and the whispers finally stopped. The police arrived the next day, but there was no sign of Miss Holloway. The children were taken away, and Blackthorn Orphanage was left in ruins. But sometimes, when the wind is just right, you can still hear the whispers. And if you listen closely, you'll hear them call a single name: Oliver.